So this is in Mark chapter 5, starting in
Okay.
verse 21 until the end of the chapter. And it's basically, there's two stories here. Two people who did not want to stay in their old condition. They wanted Jesus, right? So yeah, we just got finished discussing people who didn't want to be with Jesus. But now there's a couple of people who did want to be with Jesus. The first story, this is a story sandwich, as the lesson brings this up, right? The sandwiches, right? So you have Jairus at the beginning, and then you have Jairus at the end, and in the middle, you have this bleeding woman. Let's just summarize it, right? But you guys really should look this up. So Jairus comes in, goes to Jesus, and say, "Hey, Jesus, my daughter is dying." Right? Jairus is a ruler of the synagogue, so he's not really in good with Jesus, right? I mean, the rulers of the synagogues, the leaders of the Jewish people were not known to be friends of Jesus. But
right.
he must have been desperate, because in verse 23, he says here, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he is desperate because his daughter's dying. And here's the thing. When your daughter's dying, you do whatever it takes. I don't care, right? If I'm not on speaking terms with that guy. No, you get on speaking terms with the guy who can fix your dying daughter. Right? So here he is, and he goes to Jesus and says, "My daughter is dying. Please just put your hands on her and she's going to be okay." So Jairus had some level of faith that he's not just talking to some guy who's just going to touch his daughter for no reason. Jesus is going to touch his daughter and heal her. As they're walking, here's a woman, the bloody woman, who then just wants to sneak to a touch on Jesus' garment. She says, if I can only touch him, my bleeding would stop. Which eventually she was able to reach out, touch his garment, and Jesus said, "Whoa, somebody got some power out of me. What's going on here?" Then the whole thing was revealed, right? She said, "It's me. I touched you." Now, later on, somebody comes to Jairus, comes from Jairus's house, and say, "Hey, don't bother Jesus anymore. Your daughter died." Jesus said, "Don't worry about it. I got you." Right? And so they go in there, and he raises back his Jairus' daughter back to life. But here's one lesson is that Jesus keeps doing the impossible. Right? They already had the professional mourners there crying for Jairus' daughter, because people know what death looks like. Death is a natural thing for us, right? There's death and taxes. Can't avoid either one of these things. But Jesus doesn't worry about any of that. He said, "Don't worry about it. I got it." And he can do the impossible. So if you think that there's something that Jesus can't do because it's too hard, or sin has a big hold on you, or it's too late for you, Jesus doesn't care about what you think he can or cannot do. He'll do it anyway. Right? So, John, what do you think about that? We'll start there before I go to the second point.
No, I love that. I love that. And I think that's a very important point on a couple of different levels. On one level, you're right; it's the external level, right, in areas that perhaps we don't always venture out into. But there are people out there that have done such heinous things. I used to think that they could never be saved. There's people who think they've committed the unpardonable sin or whatever, right? And so there are things in our lives, addictions, pattern behaviors, ways of thinking and being, that we get up and it slays us, and we get up again and it slays us. And after the 30th or 50th or 100th time, you're like, "I can't deal with this. I'm never going to get well," right? Like this lady, right? And so I think it's important to think of Jesus in that context as well. The other way I think it's important to be in this context is that other frame we looked at, which is this idea that we live lives that are not transformable by the Holy Spirit. Right? Like there's a theology in Christianity that tells you that every day you're going to wake up, you're going to wrestle the barrel over again, and you better die to yourself every day. I die daily, right? And I'm not being pejorative or looking down. I'm saying that Jesus does the impossible. What you just said is exactly right. Jesus can transform a heart. Jesus can take his heart and give it to you in such a way that you begin to love what he loves and hate what he hates. And these things over time can overwhelm your pattern behaviors and create new neural pathways in your mind, to where you begin to literally, physiologically get changed like this woman. So
Yes.
I love this idea that Jesus, it sounds so glib and so, oh, he does the impossible. But when you bring it down to our lives, it's relevant and it's powerful.
Right. And again, this bleeding woman went to doctors. She's been sick for 12 years. And remember, in the Jewish society, if you're a bleeding woman, you are unclean. She's been unclean for 12 years and nobody could fix her. She used up all her money on the doctors. Nobody could fix her. But eventually, she trusted Jesus. And Jesus was able to heal her just by her touch of faith. Now, notice, though, this bleeding woman. Oh, no. Let's go to the little girl, to Jairus' daughter. What did she do in order to get Jesus' healing touch?
Oh, I heard that was important. She did nothing.
She did
It was her
nothing
father.
because she was
Yeah.
dead, right?
She
Well,
was
I mean,
dead.
she was dying, and then she was dead, right?
Yeah.
She couldn't do anything. She was totally the recipient. She was lying there, and Jesus came and touched her and healed her. So who was it that called on Jesus? It was her
Jairus.
father. She
Oh,
had a Jairus, her father, who was looking out for her best interest. So Jairus was the one who looked for Jesus and said, Jesus, I need you to heal my daughter because my daughter is dying. And so Jairus was working for his daughter, who was 12 years old. Now there was this bloody woman who was bleeding for 12 years. Who was working for her? She's been unclean this whole time. Well, by the looks of the story, she had to work for herself because nobody was helping her. Who was her father that was looking for Jesus to help her? Probably, she's unclean. You don't want to touch an unclean person because you get unclean too. So probably everybody was shunning her. Everybody's running away from her. Nobody wants to help her. She had to go help herself, and she didn't even want to talk to Jesus. She was just thinking, oh, if I can just touch his clothes, that'll be good enough. I'm going to try to sneak this in because I don't want to make him dirty, right? So she's unclean. If she touches him, technically he would become unclean. But she said, I got to do this. So here she was having to take care of herself, so to speak, and she was all alone in this world. But get this, Mark 5, verse 34. Can you read what Jesus
yes.
said?
And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace.
What did he call her?
Daughter. Daughter.
She
Daughter.
is. She is someone's daughter. And God himself is her father. When
I love that. I never saw that before.
When you have nobody to take care of you, when you can't even speak up for yourself, when you can't work for yourself, when you can't do anything for yourself, even the demoniac, right? Couldn't even say the words. God is your father. He will take care of you anyway.